25. Place The Mutt, Belur. Year beginning of 1902. It was Saturday, and the disciple came to the Mutt just before evening. An austere routine was being followed now at the Mutt regarding spiritual practices. Swamiji had issued an order that all brahmacharins and sannyasins should get up very early in the morning and practice japa and meditation in the worship room. Swamiji was having little sleep during these days and would rise from bed at 3 in the morning. On the disciple saluting Swamiji just after his appearance at the Mutt, he said, "Well, see how they are practicing religious exercises here nowadays. Everyone passes a considerable time in japa and meditation on mornings and evenings. Look there, a bell has been procured, which is used for rousing all from sleep. Everyone has to get up before dawn. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, in the morning and evening, the mind remains highly imbued with sattva ideas. Those are the times when one should meditate with earnestness." After the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, we underwent a lot of religious practice at the Baranagore Mutt. We used to get up at 3 a.m. and after washing our face, etc., some after bath, and others without it, we would sit in the worship room and become absorbed in japa and meditation. What a strong spirit of dispassion we had in those days. We had no thought even as to whether the world existed or not. Ramakrishnananda busied himself day and night with the duties pertaining to Sri Ramakrishna's worship and service, and occupied the same position in the mutt as the mistress of the house does in a family. It was he who would procure, mostly by begging, the requisite articles for Sri Ramakrishna's worship and our subsistence. There have been days when the japa and meditation continued from morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Ramakrishnananda waited and waited with our meals ready, till at last he would come and snatch us from our meditation by sheer force. Oh, what a wonderful constancy of devotion we have noticed in him. Disciple: Sir, how did you use to meet the mutt expenses then? Swamiji: What a question! Well, we were sadhus, and what would come by begging and other means would be utilized for defraying the mutt expenses. Today both Suresh Babu, Surendranath Mitra, and Balaram Babu are no more. Had they been alive, they would have been exceedingly glad to see this mutt. You have doubtless heard Suresh Babu's name. It was he who used to bear all the expenses of the Baranagore mutt. It was this Suresh Mitra who used to think most for us in those days. His devotion and faith have no parallel. Disciple: Sir, I have heard that you did not see him very often while he was dying. Swamiji: We could only do so if we were allowed by his relatives. Well, it is a long tale, but know this for certain that among worldly people, it is of little count to your relatives and kinsmen whether you live or die. If you succeed in leaving some property, you will find even in your lifetime that there has been set up a brawl over it in your household. You will have no one to console you in your deathbed, not even your wife and sons. Such is the way of the world. Referring to the past condition of the mutt, Swamiji went on, Owing to want of funds, I would sometimes fight for abolishing the mutt altogether, but I could never induce Ramakrishnananda to accede to the proposal. Know Ramakrishnananda to be the central figure of the mutt. There have been days when the mutt was without a grain of food. If some rice was collected by begging, there was no salt to take it with. On some days there would be only rice and salt, but nobody cared for it in the least. We were then being carried away by a tidal wave of spiritual practice. Boiled bimba leaves, rice, and salt. This was the menu for a month at a stretch. Oh, those wonderful days! The austerities of that period were enough to dismay supernatural beings, not to speak of men. But it is a tremendous truth that if there be real worth in you, the more are circumstances against you, the more will that inner power manifest itself. But the reason why I have provided for beds and a tolerable living in this mutt is that the sannyasins that are enrolling themselves nowadays will not be able to bear so much strain as we did. There was the life of Sri Ramakrishna before us, and that was why we did not care much for privations and hardships. Boys of this generation will not be able to undergo so much hardship. Hence it is that I have provided for some sort of habitation and a bare subsistence for them. If they get just enough food and clothing, the boys will devote themselves to religious practice and will learn to sacrifice their lives for the good of humanity. Disciple: Sir, outside people say a good deal against this sort of bedding and furniture. Swamiji: Let them say. Even in jest, they will at least once think of this mutt. And they say it is easier to attain liberation through cherishing a hostile spirit. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, men should be ignored like worms. Do you mean we have to conduct ourselves according to the chance opinion of others? Sure. Disciple: Sir, you sometimes say, all are Narayanas, the poor and the needy are my Narayanas. And again you say, men should be ignored like worms. What do you really mean? Swamiji: Well, there is not the least doubt that all are Narayanas, but all Narayanas do not criticize the furniture of the mutt. I shall go on working for the good of men, without caring in the least for the criticisms of others. It is in this sense that the expression, men are to be ignored like worms, has been used. He who has a dogged determination like that shall have everything. Only some may have it sooner, and others a little later, that is all. But one is bound to reach the goal. It is because we had such a determination that we have attained the little that we have. Otherwise, what dire days of privation we have had to pass through. One day, for want of food, I fainted in the outer platform of a house on the roadside, and quite a shower of rain had passed over my head before I recovered my senses. Another day, I had to do odd jobs in Calcutta for the whole day without food, and had my meal on my return to the mutt at 10 or 11 in the night. And these were not solitary instances. Saying these words, Swamiji sat for a while pursuing some trend of thought. Then he resumed. Real monasticism is not easy to attain. There is no order of life so rigorous as this. If you stumble ever so little, you are hurled down a precipice and are smashed to pieces. One day I was travelling on foot from Agra to Vrindaban. There was not a farthing with me. I was about a couple of miles from Vrindaban when I found a man smoking on the roadside, and I was seized with a desire to smoke. I said to the man, "Hello, will you let me have a puff at your chillum?" He seemed to be hesitating greatly and said, "Sire, I am a sweeper." Well, there was the influence of old samskaras, and I immediately stepped back and resumed my journey without smoking. I had gone a short distance when the thought occurred to me that I was a sannyasin who had renounced caste, family, prestige, and everything. And still I drew back as soon as the man gave himself out as a sweeper, and could not smoke at the chillum touched by him. The thought made me restless at heart. Then I had walked on half a mile. Again I retraced my steps and came to the sweeper whom I found still sitting there. I hastened to tell him, "Do prepare a chillum of tobacco for me, my dear friend." I paid no heed to his objections and insisted on having it. So the man was compelled to prepare a chillum for me. Then I gladly had a puff at it and proceeded to Vrindaban. When one has embraced the monastic life, one has to test whether one has gone beyond the prestige of caste and birth, etc. It is so difficult to observe the monastic vow in right earnest. There must not be the slightest divergence between one's words and actions. Disciple: Sir, you sometimes hold before us the householder's ideal and sometimes the ideal of the sannyasin. Which one are we to adopt? Swamiji: Well, go on listening to all. Then stick to that one which appeals to you. Grip it hard like a bulldog. Swamiji came downstairs accompanied by the disciple while speaking these words and began to pace to and fro, uttering now and then the name of Shiva or humming a song on the Divine Mother, such as, "Who knows how diversely thou playest, O Mother, thou flowing stream of nectar," and so on.